Hello, friends. Today we're diving into an incredibly thought-provoking book, Antifragile, by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, a brilliant thinker and philosopher. Taleb has a unique way of looking at risk, uncertainty, and life's unpredictabilities. His key idea? There are things that don't just survive chaos, they actually get stronger because of it. In this book, he challenges everything we know about fragility and resilience. Now, this book is divided into many parts, and in this video, we'll cover most of the powerful lessons from each part. Whether it's about how to thrive in randomness or why fragile systems fail, you'll gain practical insights that will make you rethink the way you approach life, business, and decisions. So, if you're ready to discover how to become anti-fragile, someone who benefits from disorder, don't forget to share and subscribe to stay updated on all the lessons we'll be breaking down. Let's get started. Welcome to the mind-blowing world of anti-fragility. Have you ever wondered why some things seem to get better when the going gets tough? What if I told you that there's a special quality in the world that allows certain things to actually thrive in uncertainty? This is where anti-fragility comes in. Let's break it down. What is anti-fragility? Imagine you're holding a delicate glass vase. What happens if you drop it? It shatters into pieces. It's fragile, right? Fragile things break or deteriorate when exposed to stress or chaos. Now think about a rock. You drop it, it doesn't break, it just sits there. It's robust. It withstands pressure, but it doesn't improve from it. It stays the same, no better, no worse. But here's the game-changing idea. Anti-fragility, things that actually get stronger when exposed to stress and challenges. Why is anti-fragility so important in our uncertain world? Here's the kicker. Our world is full of unpredictability. We face economic crashes, health crises, social unrest, and random shocks every day. Most systems are designed to resist these challenges, resilient but unchanged. But wouldn't it be incredible if we could design our systems to not only handle these shocks, but actually thrive on them? Think about it. A small business that adapts to change quickly, growing stronger after each failure. A person who, after facing hardship, emerges more capable and confident. Even the stock market, when volatile, presents opportunities for those who know how to use that chaos to their advantage. In Taleb's world, anti-fragility is the secret sauce that lets us embrace the uncertainty of life instead of fearing it. Taleb suggests that the key to success in life, business, or even health is not about avoiding risks or stresses, but about learning to harness them, to use chaos as fuel for growth. Instead of simply being resilient, just staying the same through adversity, we should aim to be anti-fragile, using the challenges we face to become stronger, smarter, and more capable. So why does this matter? In a world that's constantly throwing curveballs at us, whether it's a market crash, a global pandemic, or personal setbacks, the ability to not just survive, but benefit from this disorder could mean the difference between failure and success. The beauty of anti-fragility lies in the power to thrive through the unknown. Imagine, instead of avoiding uncertainty or stress, we can embrace them and come out on top, better than we were before. It's not about simply withstanding what life throws at us. It's about becoming stronger because of it. So, are you ready to take on the world with a new perspective? In the next chapters, we'll dive deep into how you can apply anti-fragility in your own life, career, and even in the systems we interact with every day. Get ready to rethink how you see risks, challenges, and most importantly, your own potential to thrive. The fragility of over-optimization. Let's start with Damocles, the guy in the old Greek myth who sat under a sword that was hanging by a single hair. Imagine living your life with a constant feeling of impending doom, just waiting for something bad to happen. This is what fragility looks like. Fragile systems are like Damocles. They can't handle stress or pressure. The more you try to optimize and perfect things, the more fragile they become. Taleb argues that over-optimization, whether in business, health, or life, can make systems fragile. Why? Because when you over-optimize for efficiency or perfection, you take away the natural buffers that protect you from things going wrong. You end up with a system that is highly sensitive to small shocks. For example, a company that relies on just-in-time inventory management might save money in the short run. But what happens when there's an unexpected crisis, like a supply chain disruption? That company, which looks perfect on paper, could crumble because it's too optimized and can't handle any surprises. The Hydra myth, a metaphor for antifragility. Now let's shift gears and dive into the Hydra myth. In Greek mythology, the Hydra is a creature with multiple heads. When you cut off one head, two more grow back in its place. This is where antifragility comes in. Antifragile systems thrive in the face of chaos, stress, or failure. They don't just survive, they get stronger. Think about it. Every time the Hydra loses a head, it grows more powerful. In contrast to fragile systems that break down under pressure, antifragile systems adapt, evolve, and benefit from shocks. They don't try to avoid disorder, they embrace it. So, how does this apply to our lives? Imagine you faced a setback, maybe a personal failure or a mistake in your career. If you are antifragile, instead of letting it crush you, you learn, adapt, and come back stronger. You're like the Hydra. Every challenge, every stress, every failure makes you grow stronger, not weaker. Key takeaways. Fragile systems are like Damocles, delicate, always on the edge, and highly vulnerable to stress or shocks. Over-optimization makes them even more fragile. Antifragile systems are like the Hydra. They get stronger when they face challenges. Instead of trying to avoid risk or stress, they embrace it and thrive because of it. And for 2, overcompensation and overreaction everywhere. When systems face stress, they don't just react, they often overcompensate, pushing themselves beyond the initial impact. This overreaction isn't always bad. In fact, it's often what makes a system stronger and more adaptable. Take muscles, for example. When you lift heavy weights, you're actually damaging muscle fibers. But instead of just repairing them back to their original state, your body overcompensates, rebuilding them even stronger than before. That's how strength training works. By exposing muscles to controlled stress, they don't just survive, they improve. This pattern shows up everywhere. The immune system works the same way. When exposed to small amounts of a virus, it doesn't just fight it off. It builds a defense strong enough to protect you in the future. Economies also adapt like this. A financial crisis might wipe out weak businesses, but the surviving ones often come back leaner, smarter, and more resilient. But here's where things get tricky. Overreaction isn't always positive. Sometimes when systems face stress, they overcompensate in destructive ways. Think of an investor who panics during a market crash, selling all their assets instead of holding steady. Their overreaction harms them more than the crisis itself. The key lesson? Some overcompensations make us stronger, while others make us weaker. The difference is whether the response is natural and adaptive, like muscles growing stronger, or irrational and fear-driven, like panic selling in a downturn. By understanding this, we can use stress intentionally, leveraging small challenges to trigger growth instead of breaking under pressure. Instead of fearing stress, we should embrace it as a tool for improvement. The cat and the washing machine. Not everything responds to stress in the same way. Some things adapt and grow, while others wear down and break. To explain this, Taleb compares a cat to a washing machine. One is a living, organic system, and the other is a man-made mechanical system. Imagine you drop a cat from a low height. It might be startled, but it adjusts midair, lands on its feet, and learns from the experience. That's because it's an organic system, designed by nature to handle unpredictable events. In fact, small amounts of stress, like climbing, jumping, or hunting, actually make it stronger and more agile. Now think about a washing machine. If you drop it from the same height, it doesn't adjust, it just breaks. That's because it's a mechanical system. It can handle normal use, but unexpected shocks wear it down. Over time, parts deteriorate, and eventually, it stops working altogether. Taleb's point? Nature is antifragile, machines are not. Organic systems thrive on stress and randomness. Your bones get stronger when exposed to pressure. Your immune system learns and improves when exposed to germs. Societies evolve through challenges and crises. Mechanical systems, on the other hand, degrade with time. A car gets weaker the more you drive it. A laptop slows down with age. A rigid company that never adapts will fail when market conditions change. The biggest mistake humans make? Treating organic systems like machines, overprotecting them, overcontrolling them, and trying to eliminate randomness. When we bubble wrap ourselves or our systems, we make them fragile. The solution? Embrace nature's randomness. Instead of resisting stress, use it to grow, learn, and adapt, just like the cat, not the washing machine. Top 4. What kills me makes others stronger. Sometimes, individual losses lead to greater overall strength. This is the idea behind sacrificial fragility, where one part of a system breaks, but in doing so, it makes the whole system better, smarter, and more resilient. Think of forest fires. Small fires burn weak trees and dry leaves, preventing a massive, destructive wildfire later. If we try to stop all small fires, we actually create a bigger disaster down the road. This is what happens when we overprotect systems. We remove natural stressors that help them evolve, making them weaker over time. Taleb connects this idea to evolution, the ultimate antifragile system. Individual organisms may fail, but species evolve stronger and more adaptable through natural selection. Weak traits disappear. Stronger traits survive and multiply. Over time, life becomes more resilient to challenges. This applies everywhere. In business, some companies fail, but their mistakes teach others how to succeed. In finance, bad investments collapse, but they reveal weaknesses in the market and help build better risk strategies. Even in society, hardships and failures force people to innovate and improve. The key takeaway? Some things must break for progress to happen. Instead of fearing failure, we should see it as a necessary process that makes the whole system stronger. The goal isn't to avoid stress. It's to make sure failures are small, contained, and lead to long-term growth. 5. The ethics of fragility and anti-fragility. When things go wrong, who pays the price? Taleb argues that one of the biggest problems in society is when fragility is transferred to others, meaning some people take risks but don't suffer the consequences, while others pay the price for their mistakes. This is where ethics come into play. Think of bank executives during financial crises. They take big risks for huge profits, but when things collapse, it's taxpayers who bail them out. The executives walk away rich while ordinary people lose jobs, savings, and security. This is a clear example of asymmetry, where one side gets all the rewards and the other bears all the risks. Taleb introduces the idea of skin in the game, a simple but powerful principle. If you make decisions that affect others, you should share in the risks. A doctor should be careful with treatments because their reputation is on the line. A politician should feel the impact of their policies instead of making decisions from a safe distance. A business leader should face consequences if their company fails, not just walk away with bonuses. In anti-fragile systems, bad decisions naturally get punished. But when fragility is transferred, people escape accountability, and the system gets weaker over time. The lesson? True ethics means sharing both risks and rewards. If you want a strong, fair, and anti-fragile society, the people making decisions should feel the impact of those decisions, just like everyone else. Toss 6. The intellectual yet idiot, IYI. Taleb takes aim at a certain type of person, the intellectual yet idiot. These are people who seem highly educated, quote complex theories, and hold important positions, but lack real-world understanding. They rely too much on academic models, ignoring how things actually work in unpredictable environments. The problem? They believe the world can be controlled through theories and formulas. They sit in offices, writing policies, and making predictions, without ever experiencing the consequences of their decisions. They ignore antifragility, assuming that life follows neat logical patterns when, in reality, it's full of chaos and randomness. Take economists who design financial models. Many of them never trade or invest themselves, yet they make decisions that affect millions of people. When the models fail, like in the 2008 financial crisis, they don't suffer. Ordinary people do. Or think about bureaucrats who create complex rules for businesses, even though they've never run a business themselves. They believe everything can be managed with policies, but real success comes from trial, error, and adaptation. Taleb's warning? Beware of people who sound smart but lack practical experience. Real wisdom comes from those who have actually dealt with uncertainty, not those who just talk about it. Antifragility comes from action, not theory. 7. The green lumber fallacy. Knowing a lot about something doesn't always mean you know how to do it. Taleb calls this the green lumber fallacy, a mistake people make when they assume theoretical knowledge is more valuable than practical experience. The name comes from a real story. A trader made a fortune selling green lumber, but he mistakenly thought it was wood painted green. He had no idea what he was selling, yet he was wildly successful. Meanwhile, others who deeply understood lumber failed in the market. Why? Because success in trading wasn't about knowing wood. It was about understanding market behavior. Taleb's point? Practical experience beats theory. Many so-called experts believe they need deep academic knowledge to succeed, but real-world skills often matter more. A great chef doesn't need to know food chemistry to cook an amazing dish. A successful entrepreneur might not have an MBA, but they understand customers and adapt to the market. A master martial artist may not know the physics behind a punch, but they can still knock someone out. In fragile systems, people obsess over theory and ignore practical skills. But in anti-fragile systems, real experience wins because it allows for adaptation and learning from mistakes. The lesson? Don't get fooled by academic knowledge alone. If you want to master something, focus on doing it, not just studying it. J8. The Philosopher's Stone and its inverse. People have always searched for the perfect formula, the one key that will unlock success, predict the future, or eliminate uncertainty. This is the philosopher's stone of decision-making, the idea that if we optimize enough, we can control everything. But Taleb warns, this kind of thinking is dangerous. Why? Because over-optimization makes things fragile. When we try to fine-tune a system too much, we remove its natural ability to adapt. It becomes brittle, working perfectly under normal conditions, but collapsing under stress. Take finance as an example. Banks create complex models to predict risk, believing they can control market behavior. But when a crisis hits, like in 2008, these models fail spectacularly because they don't account for real-world randomness. Or think about health. Some people track every calorie and every workout, optimizing their routine to perfection. But life isn't predictable. An illness, an injury, or unexpected stress can throw everything off. Instead of being resilient, their bodies break under pressure. The solution? Optionality and flexibility. Instead of trying to predict the future, build systems that can handle surprises. A person with multiple skills and income sources is stronger than someone who depends on one job. A business with diverse products and adaptable strategies survives market crashes. A society that allows for trial and error evolves, while a rigid system eventually fails. Taleb's message? Stop chasing perfect predictions. The real power comes from being adaptable, embracing uncertainty, and having the ability to change course when needed. That's how you build an anti-fragile life. 9. Fat Tony and the Fragilistas. Taleb introduces two types of thinkers: Fat Tony, the street-smart practical guy, and the fragilistas, those who rely too much on theories, models, and predictions. This contrast reveals the danger of trusting models over real-world intuition. Who is Fat Tony? Fat Tony isn't an academic. He doesn't sit in an office analyzing charts all day. Instead, he trusts his instincts, adapts to uncertainty, and looks at how things actually work. He doesn't need complex formulas to see opportunities. He reads people, understands markets, and makes decisions based on what works, not what should work in theory. Who are the fragilistas? The fragilistas are the opposite. These are the economists, bureaucrats, and financial analysts who think they can predict the future with their models. They believe that numbers and equations can control uncertainty, but they ignore reality, and that's where they fail. A perfect example? The 2008 financial crisis. The fragilistas built fancy risk models, convinced that their math was flawless. But when reality hit, when randomness and chaos entered the system, their models collapsed, and the entire economy suffered. Meanwhile, Fat Tony, with his street smarts, saw the flaws and avoided disaster. The lesson? Practical beats theoretical. Real-world experience trumps academic knowledge. If you rely too much on predictions, you become fragile. Adaptability, intuition, and understanding human nature make you stronger in an uncertain world. Taleb's advice? Think like Fat Tony. Stop obsessing over theories and start focusing on what actually works. That's the key to anti-fragility. The 10. The barbell strategy. The barbell strategy is all about balancing two extremes. On one side, you minimize risk, and on the other, you take big, bold risks. Imagine a barbell at the gym. One side is heavy, and the other side is light. This is how you balance your financial decisions, career, and even life. How does it work? Let's break it down. The idea is to keep your core assets safe, something low risk, stable, and almost guaranteed to protect you. On the other side, you take big, high-risk, high-reward bets. This way, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're avoiding the middle, where things are neither completely safe nor fully risky. For example, in finance, you might keep most of your money in low-risk assets like bonds or savings accounts. Then, with a small portion, you invest in highly speculative stocks or start a new business. If those high-risk investments pay off, you win big. If they don't, you're protected by your low-risk assets. In career or life, the barbell strategy works outside finance too. In your career, you could have a steady job that covers your basics, but also invest time in side projects or passion ventures that carry some risk but could lead to massive rewards. In life, you might stick to safe, reliable routines for the essentials: health, family, security, but embrace adventure, new experiences, or creative challenges on the side. This way, you're not just sitting in the middle, doing everything at moderate risk. You're maximizing your upside while protecting yourself from the downside. Why is it effective? The barbell strategy works because it embraces both sides of risk. It keeps you safe and stable on one end. It allows you to seize big opportunities without risking everything. It's about understanding that extremes are often safer than the middle ground. Playing it safe all the time is fragile, while being too risky can lead to big losses. The barbell strategy gives you the best of both worlds: security and upside potential. So, in a world full of uncertainties, remember to apply the barbell strategy. Take small, controlled risks and keep your big, important parts safe. It's a smart way to navigate through life, keeping your options open and your potential high. 11. The anti-fragility of innovation. Innovation isn't about having a perfect plan from the start. It's about trial and error. In fact, trial and error is the engine that drives progress. The best innovations don't come from following a strict linear path, but from experimentation, failure, and then learning from those failures. Taleb explains how anti-fragility plays a huge role in technological advancement. Trial and error, the secret to progress. Think about how great inventions were made. Most of them didn't come from one brilliant stroke of genius. They came from people messing up, making mistakes, and then adjusting their approach. This process of failures leading to insights is what makes systems anti-fragile. Each failure isn't a setback, it's an opportunity to learn and improve. Take technology, for instance. The internet, smartphones, even electric cars. They didn't happen because someone predicted exactly how things would unfold. They evolved over time through experiments, mistakes, and random events that shaped their paths. Randomness drives innovation. Here's the thing about randomness. It's not the enemy. In fact, it's one of the biggest drivers of progress. When we embrace randomness, we open ourselves up to opportunities that we didn't expect. Serendipitous breakthroughs that wouldn't have happened if we were sticking to rigid plans. Randomness helps create diversity and variety, which are key to growth. It allows us to explore multiple options and find the best one, even if we don't know exactly where we're headed. For example, scientific discoveries often happen by accident. A random observation here, a missed hypothesis there, and suddenly, a breakthrough. The anti-fragility of innovation. So why is innovation anti-fragile? Because the process itself thrives on uncertainty and failure. When you allow for randomness, you allow for the possibility of something unexpected that could completely change the game. This makes the system stronger over time. In the same way, the more mistakes you make, the better your chances of finding that one thing that will take you to the next level. In technology, every failed attempt brings us closer to the next big thing. The more we push boundaries and embrace randomness, the more likely we are to stumble upon something revolutionary. The takeaway. In summary, innovation doesn't fear failure. It welcomes it. And when you embrace randomness and trial and error, you create a system that gets better over time. It becomes anti-fragile. So next time you fail, don't stress. Learn from it, adapt, and use it as a stepping stone to something even bigger. That's how true innovation happens. Task 12. Why the city-state is anti-fragile. In this chapter, Taleb explores why smaller, decentralized systems, like city-states, are more resilient and anti-fragile than large, centralized ones. He argues that in a world full of uncertainty, smaller, more flexible systems are better equipped to adapt, thrive, and survive over time. The power of decentralization. Think about the world today, giant-shot nation-states with their top-heavy bureaucracies and massive systems of control. These huge organizations often struggle to react quickly when faced with change or crisis. Why? Because they are rigid and rely too much on centralized decision-making. When one part of the system fails, the entire structure is at risk. On the other hand, smaller, decentralized systems, like city-states or small businesses, can adapt much more quickly to change. If one part fails, it doesn't bring the whole thing down. Instead, these systems thrive on diversity, independence, and the ability to adjust quickly to new circumstances. History's lesson on small states. Throughout history, small city-states, like Venice, Athens, and Florence, have been remarkably resilient. These cities faced wars, plagues, and other challenges, but because they were decentralized and could make decisions quickly, they were able to adapt and evolve. In contrast, large empires or nation-states often collapsed under their own weight. When a single government or centralized authority tries to control everything, it can become slow, bureaucratic, and fragile. The city-states, however, were agile and nimble. They embraced diversity of thought, action, and governance, allowing them to grow stronger in times of stress. The modern takeaway. Taleb suggests that we can learn a lot from these small, decentralized systems. In today's world, we often face complexity and uncertainty, and a centralized approach may not always be the best way forward. Decentralization can actually make us more resilient. Whether it's in business, politics, or society, smaller units that allow for flexibility and adaptation are better equipped to handle change and unexpected events. The real power of small systems. The beauty of smallness is that it allows for experimentation and innovation. These smaller systems don't have to wait for a top-down approval process to make changes. They can be nimble, fast, and adaptable, making them anti-fragile. The less you rely on centralized control, the more flexible and resilient you become. So, Taleb's message is clear. Smaller, decentralized systems are more robust because they allow for diversity, independence, and quick adaptation. In an uncertain world, these are the qualities that help us thrive. 13. The nonlinearity of life. In this chapter, Taleb dives deep into the nonlinear nature of life, showing how small actions or changes can lead to disproportionate effects. He introduces the ideas of convexity and concavity, which play a huge role in how we make decisions, especially when things are uncertain or complex. Nonlinearity, small changes, big impact. We often think in a linear way, believing that if we make a small change, it will result in a small outcome. But that's not how the world works. In reality, small changes can trigger huge shifts. A tiny decision or action today might lead to a massive transformation down the line. This is the idea of nonlinearity. For example, think about how a small investment in a new technology can snowball into huge returns years later, or how a seemingly small action in a relationship can lead to big changes over time. This is why predicting outcomes in a linear way often leads to mistakes. Life doesn't follow a straight line. It's more like a web of interconnected possibilities. Convexity versus concavity. Now, let's talk about convexity and concavity. These two concepts help us understand how our decisions impact us in the long run. Convexity. This is when small gains can lead to big rewards. Imagine a curve that goes up as you keep investing or putting in effort. With convexity, the more you put in, the more you get back, exponentially. In life, these are the areas where you can see disproportionate returns for small investments or risks. Think of it like compounding interest or small businesses that explode into huge companies. Concavity. This is the opposite. Here, the costs of failure or risk are exponential. Small losses can lead to huge setbacks. Think of risky ventures where small mistakes can have devastating consequences. In these situations, the risks accumulate and the damage gets worse the more you go down the wrong path. How does this impact decision-making? The key to making better decisions is understanding where you are operating on the convex or concave curve. If you're in a convex situation, taking small risks can lead to big rewards, so it's worth leaning in and taking action. On the flip side, if you're in a concave situation, even small losses can spiral out of control, and you should be extra careful and avoid unnecessary risks. This concept helps us make smarter choices, whether we're dealing with finances, relationships, or career decisions. Taleb suggests that in life, it's better to lean into convexity, to take risks in areas where small actions can lead to massive gains, while avoiding the areas where risks are disproportionately costly. The takeaway: life is nonlinear, and understanding that small actions can lead to massive outcomes is key. Embrace situations with convexity, where small steps can lead to big rewards, and stay cautious of concave situations where small mistakes can have huge consequences. This mindset can make you more resilient and antifragile, allowing you to thrive in an unpredictable world. 14. The antifragility of time. In this chapter, Taleb explores how time itself can make things more resilient, stronger, and even antifragile. He introduces us to the Lindy effect, a fascinating concept that explains how the longer something survives, the more likely it is to continue thriving. Time doesn't just pass, it amplifies antifragility. Time makes things stronger. Here's the thing: when something survives long enough, it actually becomes more robust and resilient. In simple terms, the longer something lasts, the stronger it gets. Think about ancient ideas, classic books, or even certain business models. They've withstood the test of time, and that endurance itself makes them anti-fragile. Why does this happen? Because over time, these things face challenges, obstacles, and stress, and instead of breaking down, they adapt and improve. Like a muscle that gets stronger with each workout, time acts as a force that makes these things more durable and able to survive future challenges. The Lindy effect. Now, let's talk about the Lindy effect, which is Taleb's take on how time affects survival. The Lindy effect says that if something has survived for a long time, the longer it continues to survive, the more likely it is to continue existing for even longer. For example, think about classic books. If a book has been around for hundreds of years, the Lindy effect tells us it's probably going to be around for hundreds more. Similarly, if a technology or idea has lasted for decades, it's likely to stay relevant for much longer than newer, untested innovations. The key point here is that time is a filter. Over time, the weak and fragile ideas or systems are weeded out, and only the strongest and most resilient survive. This process amplifies antifragility. Things that endure over time have been tested and adapted to survive, which means they're better prepared for whatever challenges the future holds. What survives is antifragile. When we look at things that have lasted, we see that they have something in common: antifragility. They didn't just survive, they grew stronger. Take ancient cultures, time-tested knowledge, or even nature itself. These things have been refined and adapted through time. They've faced stresses, and rather than breaking down, they've thrived. In a world full of uncertainty, what survives is often antifragile because it has been tested and refined over time. This makes these things more resilient, able to adapt and benefit from the very stresses and challenges that would destroy weaker systems. The takeaway: time isn't just a passing force. It amplifies antifragility. Through the Lindy effect, we see that what survives long enough is often stronger and more resilient than anything that's just starting out. So whether it's an idea, a product, or even a relationship, remember, time tests what works. What survives is likely to keep getting stronger and more robust. That's the power of time and anti-fragility. 15. The ethics of complex systems. In this chapter, Taleb delves into the moral implications of interacting with and interfering in complex systems. He highlights the dangers of suppressing natural volatility and how this can lead to unintended consequences. Taleb challenges us to think about the ethics of our actions when we try to control or smooth out the chaos in the world around us. Intervening in complex systems. A dangerous game. Complex systems, like the economy, ecology, or even societies, work because of their inherent volatility and chaos. These systems are like intricate webs where every action or change can ripple through and affect the whole. The key takeaway here is that interfering with these systems, whether through overregulation, excessive control, or trying to predict every outcome, can do more harm than good. For example, when governments or organizations try to smooth out the natural ups and downs of the economy or force certain trends, they often create unintended consequences that can make the system weaker in the long run. Trying to control volatility may seem like a good idea, but it often ends up stifling the system's natural ability to adapt and recover. Volatility is natural, and it's essential. Taleb argues that volatility isn't the enemy. It's an essential part of how systems grow, evolve, and become anti-fragile. Just like how muscles grow stronger after they're put under stress, or how markets become more resilient after experiencing fluctuations, systems in nature and society need natural volatility to thrive. When we try to eliminate this volatility, whether by creating overly stable systems or by intervening with predictive models, we are interfering with the system's natural processes. This, Taleb argues, is morally problematic because we are suppressing the very forces that allow systems to adapt, evolve, and survive. The dangers of overstabilization. When we overstabilize complex systems, we create fragility. Without enough stressors or disruptions, systems can't grow or adapt. This leads to a false sense of security, where everything appears stable, but underneath, the system is actually becoming more vulnerable. The next big shock could be catastrophic because the system hasn't been tested enough to withstand it. Taleb uses examples from history, economics, and nature to show how the suppression of volatility can lead to disastrous outcomes. When we try to predict or control everything, we are ultimately making systems more fragile, not more resilient. The takeaway. The key lesson here is that we shouldn't interfere too much with complex systems. Volatility is not just a natural part of life, but a necessary force for systems to become stronger and more resilient. By trying to eliminate this chaos, we risk making systems fragile. The ethical responsibility lies in understanding that sometimes the best thing we can do is let the system breathe and evolve on its own. Intervening too much can have far-reaching consequences, and we must respect the natural dynamics of the world around us. 16. The via negativa. In this chapter, Taleb introduces the concept of via negativa, a powerful approach to gaining anti-fragility by focusing on what to remove rather than what to add. He argues that subtraction, removing harmful elements, often leads to stronger, more resilient systems. This principle is a game changer for understanding how to thrive in an unpredictable world. Anti-fragility through removal. Instead of trying to add more to your life, business, or system in the hopes of improving it, removing the harmful things can actually make it stronger and more resilient. Think about it. When you eliminate unnecessary risk or cut out bad habits, you reduce the chances of becoming fragile in the face of stress. In simple terms, less is often more when it comes to building something that can thrive in uncertainty. Taleb emphasizes that antifragility doesn't just come from adding complexity or new ideas. It often comes from simplifying and removing things that weaken your system. This could mean getting rid of unnecessary risks, toxic relationships, or overcomplicating decisions. The less you have to manage or worry about, the stronger your position becomes when faced with challenges. Subtraction over addition. Most people are wired to think that adding something will improve things. We think we need more money, more plans, or more safety nets. But what Taleb suggests is quite the opposite. Subtraction is the real key to success in chaotic and uncertain environments. This idea of doing less is seen throughout nature and life. Nature itself doesn't add complexity without reason. It removes what's unnecessary to become more efficient and resilient. In the world of business, this might mean focusing on a few key products or services and getting rid of the rest. In personal life, it could be about focusing on your most important relationships and cutting out distractions or toxic influences. The principle here is that removing what's fragile or weak will make your system much more resilient. The power of negative thinking. This concept also connects with what Taleb calls negative thinking, the idea that it's easier to avoid disaster by eliminating the risks you know exist than it is to predict the future and add protections. Instead of trying to predict what could go wrong, focus on eliminating things that are already fragile, which reduces the likelihood of failure. For example, rather than obsessing over future threats, you can strengthen your resilience simply by making sure your current system isn't vulnerable to obvious risks. The takeaway. The big lesson from this chapter is that achieving anti-fragility is not about adding more stuff, more ideas, or more complexity. It's about removing what makes things fragile. Simplify, subtract the weak links, and focus on what truly adds value. Via negativa teaches us that in a world full of uncertainty, less is often more. And less risk equals more resilience. So the next time you're looking for solutions, ask yourself, what can I remove? 17. The anti-fragility of religion and tradition. In this chapter, Taleb explores how religion and tradition can serve as anti-fragile systems. He argues that these elements, often seen as rigid or outdated, have evolved through randomness and trial and error over time, becoming more resilient in the face of uncertainty. How traditions evolve through randomness. Taleb makes the case that traditions aren't necessarily the result of some grand design or long-term planning. Instead, they often emerge and evolve through random events and trial and error. Over time, some practices prove to be beneficial for survival, while others fade away. It's this natural selection of ideas and practices that makes tradition anti-fragile. For example, many religious practices or cultural traditions have survived centuries precisely because they were tested in real-life conditions, adapting and evolving based on what worked and what didn't. Taleb suggests that, much like the evolution of species, traditions evolve by surviving the stressors of history, gradually becoming stronger and more resilient to future challenges. Religion and anti-fragility. Taleb then shifts to religion, arguing that religion plays a critical role in creating anti-fragile societies. Just like traditions, religions have been shaped and refined over time, often by random events and historical circumstances. Despite facing persecution, conflict, and change, religious systems have managed to persist and adapt, growing stronger and more flexible. Religion, in Taleb's view, is not just a set of beliefs, but a complex system that has been honed through centuries of survival in uncertain environments. The rituals, teachings, and structures that religions provide can create a sense of stability and cohesion in societies, making them more resilient to external shocks, whether they come in the form of economic collapse, political upheaval, or natural disasters. Randomness in religion and tradition. One of the key insights in this chapter is the idea that religions and traditions are anti-fragile because they've been shaped by randomness. They evolve not through the careful planning of individuals, but through accumulated experiences, mistakes, and adaptations. For instance, the rituals that seem arbitrary or outdated may have originated from random events that, over time, proved to be effective survival strategies. Taleb suggests that by embracing randomness, societies can build resilient structures that can withstand unforeseen events. Religion and tradition, when looked at from this perspective, are dynamic and capable of evolving through exposure to the unpredictability of life. The takeaway. The takeaway here is that religion and tradition are not static or fragile elements. They are anti-fragile systems that evolve and strengthen over time through randomness, adaptation, and trial and error. Far from being outdated or irrelevant, they have been refined over centuries, proving to be resilient to external shocks and stresses. Taleb's message is clear. Traditions and religions provide a model for how we can embrace uncertainty and randomness in our own lives, using these forces to build strength rather than fear them. 18. The ethics of fragility transfer. In this chapter, Taleb delves into the moral implications of transferring fragility to others. He focuses on the dangers of making systems or people more fragile and how this impacts fairness and accountability in society. What is fragility transfer? Fragility transfer refers to the shifting risks and vulnerabilities of fragile systems onto others. Taleb points out that often, in the face of uncertainty or crisis, powerful institutions, businesses, or individuals impose risks and fragility onto weaker parties. This creates inequality and unfairness in society. A classic example would be when businesses make risky decisions but pass on the consequences to others, whether it's the taxpayers, employees, or the general public. For instance, when banks engage in high-risk practices and fail, the public often ends up bearing the cost. The system collapses, but the ones responsible for the failure don't face the full consequences. Fragility is transferred to the innocent. Taleb argues that this lack of accountability creates a fundamentally unfair society, where those who create fragility are not held accountable for their actions. The dangers of imposing fragility on others. Taleb stresses that the act of imposing fragility on others is not just an ethical issue, it's a dangerous practice that leads to social instability. When fragile systems harm other people or groups, it creates a cycle of harm that has long-term consequences. For example, consider government bailouts of failing corporations. While the companies are saved, ordinary people are left to bear the cost, creating resentment and distrust in the system. This creates a moral paradox. Those who create fragility don't face the consequences, but those who are least responsible for it suffer the most. Taleb believes that this leads to a more fragile society overall, because people stop taking responsibility for their actions, knowing they can shift the risks onto others. In the long run, it weakens the social fabric and fosters unfairness. Accountability and fairness. To counter this problem, Taleb argues that accountability is key. People, organizations, and institutions need to be held responsible for the fragility they create. Instead of transferring the risks to others, there should be a focus on making sure that those who take risks bear the consequences, good or bad. This helps maintain fairness and prevents the creation of systems that are ultimately unsustainable. Taleb emphasizes that fairness isn't just about equality, it's about ensuring that responsibility lies where it should. If you create fragility, you should take on the consequences. This principle, Taleb argues, is foundational to building more resilient and equitable systems. The takeaway. The central message of this chapter is that fragility transfer is unethical and harmful to society. When the risks of fragile systems are shifted to others, it creates unfairness and accountability gaps. Taleb argues that a fair and resilient society is one where accountability and responsibility are placed in the right hands. Those who create fragility must face the consequences, and in doing so, we can build a society that is more stable, fair, and anti-fragile. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Antifragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I hope you found these insights helpful and thought-provoking, and that they inspire you to approach life and challenges in a whole new way. Remember, it's not just about surviving chaos, it's about becoming stronger because of it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.